for inviting me in to speak with you today. I'm delighted to be with you. Speaking to you from the US, so it's still morning here. And I have done most of my work in the United States, but I've been really fortunate to in the past 10 years, do a lot of work in the UK, but I'm no expert on the UK system. So you're gonna have to translate with me. When I say grade 2, you're gonna have to say year 3, so I'll do my best. You should, at any point, as Chloe said, put questions in the chat or go through Chloe for questions. I would be happy to be pushed at any point. I hope to be useful to you today. I hope to be provocative today and push your thinking about instruction. But if you have tough questions, if you think what I'm sharing doesn't make sense, if you think it's not applicable in your setting, please push and I'll try to make the bridge to where you are. I'm always fine with sort of interrupting my flow to address what really is a good connection to the actual setting and context that you're in. I hope to be more than just theoretical with you today. I hope to be sharing practices that may actually be useful to you right away. And we'll see if I can achieve that. I'll be sharing student work with you today. I'll be sharing a lot of video of actual teacher practice with you today too. I won't say that much about me, except that I've been in education 47 years, so a really long time. About 30 of those years, I was fully in schools, and now I write books and produce videos and do a lot of speaking, but I'm still in schools. I was in schools this week, I was in schools last week, so I'm trying to, no matter how many books I write, I'm trying to stay connected to the actual challenges of teaching in this time. And first of all, I just want to thank you all for sticking with education during the pandemic. This has been the lousiest time to be an educator in all of my 47 years of work. And anyone who's stayed in the profession, I just want to thank you. This has just been awful. And so I express my appreciation on behalf of everyone. Educators are the heroes to me right now in the world. All right, I'm going to dive right in with sharing my screen. And Chloe, if there's ever any problems with logistics, you just let me know. So the title of this presentation is about beautiful instruction. I spent about 30 years obsessing about beautiful student work, and you will see some beautiful student work in my presentation today. And instruction was not my big focus because I was really focused on project-based learning and the incredible student work that can come from project-based learning. About 15 years ago, I shifted into thinking, what is the kind of instruction that can create that beautiful work and deeper work? I love that the Castle-Mead Trust vision is that every student is capable of excellence. It is exactly my vision. So what's the kind of instruction that will push kids towards excellence? That's my focus for today. This is why I'm in education. I think that test scores matter now. They matter to you. They matter to every school I work with in the US and in other international places. But test scores are not what life is about. Life is about two things. It's about the kind of human being you are and the kind of work that you do. And I think that schools need to focus much more deeply on creating good human beings who do high quality work. And that's the focus of great instruction for me. I'll tell you a little bit about where I come from. About 30 years ago, I helped to found a nonprofit. It's based in the United States, although there's a number of schools in the UK, particularly the XP schools in the Doncaster area that use this model of education. And we have about 150 schools in the United States, and then many large districts included that serve about 500,000 students that use our model that our nonprofit supports. So we're a nonprofit that was founded by two organizations. One of them is Harvard University in the state of Massachusetts, which is where I live, and I teach at Harvard University. And the other is Outward Bound, which was founded in Wales. You may know this, founded by Kurt Hahn, a person who was a German educator. He fled Nazi Germany to England after having been imprisoned, and founded schools, the Gordonson School, Zalem School in England, and then founded Outward Bound in the UK. And I've been to Aberdyfi, Wales, where the first Outward Bound school is, where all XP students go in their first week of school. And from Outward Bound, we get a different edge on schooling. Our Harvard roots bring us our academic excellence, and our Outward Bound roots bring us this focus on character and teamwork and service and compassion. The vision of Outward Bound is you're going to get every kid to the top of the mountain, and every kid has to help each other get to the top of the mountain. And we wondered, what if school were that way? What if school were actually a team sport, not an individual sport? What if every kid saw their job in school to help every one of their classmates make it? So we've redefined student achievement in the United States, and I don't know what it is for you in the UK exactly, even though I've worked in the UK a lot. I don't know between what is said and what is the reality. In the United States, we always talk about educating the whole child, but really only one thing matters in the United States right now, and that's test scores in mathematics and literacy. We are trying to redefine student achievement in the United States to mean three things. First of all, mastery of academic knowledge and skills, which is not just test scores, right? It's kids being great readers and writers and mathematicians and historians and artists. We also focus equally on character and on high quality work. So when we're talking about mastery of knowledge and skills, we're talking about more than just prepping kids to do well on exams. We're talking about having them be confident in every academic discipline. When we talk about character, we talk about creating the kind of human beings that we want to live with, that we want to live around, who will be taking care of us, running our countries. And when we talk about high quality student work, we talk about craftsmanship and beautiful work that we believe every kid can do. We have a framework for character. I'm not sharing it with you because you would use it, but just to give you a sense of where I'm coming from and what I advocate. Our framework for character has at its center contributing to a better world. So we believe that the whole purpose of creating great character is not just to be a good person, but to be a good person to do good for others. That contributing to a better world is at the center of our vision for student character. We want effective learners and ethical people who are making their world a better place. We also have frameworks for deeper instruction. I'll talk a little bit more about our deeper instruction framework, and a framework for attributes of high quality work. Because we're a nonprofit, everything we create is free and open source. I hope that after this, you may visit our website and just take anything you wish. You're welcome to steal whatever we have, because we stole our ideas from other people too. This is the way education works. We all borrow our thinking from each other, and we share it as we can. And other than our books, which we can't give away, everything we create is free and open source. So let me start with a quick case study. The closest city to where I live, and I live rurally. In fact, that what you see behind me is my front yard. That is a posted picture of my front yard. I'm actually in my office right now, but that is my front yard. And I live rurally. You can see there's no houses I see from my front porch. The closest city to me is an industrial city, which, like many cities in the UK, lost its industry. So when I worked in Doncaster, they lost the coal mines, they lost the factories. That's what happened in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's a small city, it's about 150,000, and they have 6 high schools in this city and high poverty in this city. Of those 6 high schools, 5 of them are not doing well. And you know, the structure in the US is slightly different than it is in the UK. So I would say, just to frame it for you, our students, when they are year 10s, when they are, we would call 9th graders, enter a 4-year high school program and graduate after what we would say is 12th grade to go on to college or to work. They can drop out ahead of that at age 16, so at year 11 for you. In 5 of these high schools, only 60% of the students are making it to graduation. But the one high school that we supported is actually doing really different. That's the EL Education School. So at this school, which has 700 students, 84% of them are students of color. About the same percent are students of low income. 96% of those students are graduating on time, and 100% of those students have been accepted into college or university for 15 years. So let me just say that again. Every single graduate of this school has gotten into college or university for the last 15 years. which is when Castle Mead and when the Mead Educational Trust says every student is capable of excellence, this is what it can look like to me, is that every student has been accepted to university from every background, and most of them have families that never could have dreamed of going to college or university. So why is that the case? There's a lot of reasons, of course. You know, it takes the whole culture of a school to make kids succeed. For example, we have a structure that we took from Outward Bound called CREW. It's an academic and personal health advisory that meets every single day with a small group of about 12 kids. There is a deep focus on relationships. The adults in the school know the children really well. And there's also beautiful instruction and beautiful work. So, for example, this is a project that 9th grade students, year 10s for you, did for their city. They created a blueprint for a greener city, which they called a green print. They created a scientific report for the city to push the city to make buildings more energy safe. So those students were trained by city engineers to do energy audits of city buildings. So they checked the buildings for the insulation and the windows and the HVAC systems. And
he's going to go and ask a lot of questions. But yeah, don't worry about his exams. We'll make sure he gets to do his exams, but just he has got to sit the seat up. We'll just work out what he
colleagues that have joined us that we are on mute.
Right.
No worries. Those students then created a report which asked the city to invest $156,000 US into renovating the city's schools. And they promised that within 5 years, the city would make all of its money back through savings in energy, in fuel and in electricity. And the city actually listened to the students, 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, listened to their advice and invested all of that money and rebuilt its schools and renovated its schools to be more energy efficient, helping save the environment, helping save taxpayer money. Within 2 years, they had recouped all of their investment and they were now saving money for the city. They then set aside $250,000 US and went back to the school and asked the students to start doing energy audits of all the city buildings. And the students' first response was to say to us, it's kind of like slave labor. And we said, yeah, it is kind of like slave labor, except that you are saving the world, you are helping your community, and you know you're all going to college and you're going to bring this report to your college interviews. And you are going to probably get a job back in the city helping to do this and making a lot of money saving the world. So they had continued to do energy audits of city buildings as part of their learning. But I'm going to pause here to say, I'm talking now about a project, and I promised I'm not going to actually talk about projects today. I'm going to talk about instruction. So what's the kind of instruction that pushes kids toward this kind of excellence? What's the kind of instruction that pushes kids beyond what you think kids of that age is possible? So I'm going to bring you into a classroom, and that classroom is in a different EL school. It's in an EL education school in New York City. It is a secondary school. So we would say grades 6 through 12 or years 7 through the end of high school time. And I want to show you what it looks like when students are being pushed in their scientific thinking. And it's an example for me of a beautiful lesson. So if all works, I'll be able to have you watch this video, and then we're going to take a quick pause to have all of you discuss, what did you notice in the video? What questions come up for you? And we'll have some time in breakout rooms and in person where you are for a little bit of discussion.
Of this case study, and you guys asked for some information yesterday.
Hillary Mills' 11th grade biology students are at a powerful junction in the learning process.
We're at the point where we are wrapping up our case study, an investigation into the use of this TALEN gene therapy, which is a particular gene editing technique that's being used to combat Duchenne's disease.
At a moment when many teachers might decide to conclude the learning with a summative assessment, Hillary's class decides to push themselves more deeply into the content.
They've invested a significant amount of time in terms of learning a variety of science content. They're swimming in all of the science that they know, and they're trying to figure out a way to piece it together. So what we're going to do at this point is we are going to be able to have a bioethical debate or an academic conversation that talks about the use of TALEN gene therapy as a means to combat Duchenne's.
We captured the class for 2 days, expecting to see how students prepare for and hold an academic conversation on the complex topic of TALEN gene therapy. On the second day, however, Hillary decides to postpone the conversation, choosing instead to support her students in deepening their understanding of the topic. In this 2-part video, we look first at how the class uses a complex scientific figure to activate and push thinking. In the second video, we explore how students make connections among concepts and technical vocabulary and use scientific notebooks to organize their thinking for the upcoming conversation.
So I found this really awesome Science Journal article that was produced by a group of scientists who have actually done some of these clinical studies using TALEN gene therapy. And they produced a figure that I think is going to be interesting to us. To match sort of where their level of science is, I went to the figures and the data tables and found this particular figure that was a demonstration of what happens when this gene therapy is used.
By selecting a highly technical figure, one that referenced and activated familiar content and vocabulary, but remained puzzling in explicit meaning, Hillary set her students up to grapple with their conceptual understanding of TALEN gene therapy.
My students access documents across the board, in math classes, global history, English. When analyzing documents, it's almost never about what is right or wrong, but how they're making sense of what they're looking at.
So we go into the document and we'll look for everything we know and we'll try to piece it together. And I think we're so good at that because we've done it so often.
So a document that could be slightly intimidating, really overwhelming, something that they've never seen before, any student can enter that with basic observations that they see and inferences that they could make based on the observations that they're making. We have 4 minutes. Get your questions answered. Build on each other's ideas. We're trying to figure out how this TALEN gene therapy works. So when scientists look at any type of document, they don't do this in isolation. So there's an element of needing to talk through or collaborate with other scientists, which is exactly what we try and mimic in our science classrooms.
So what I was wondering was that, are they shifting it out of frame until the stop is no longer there?
So basically after they go back into the amino acids, they basically readjust the reading frames.
I'll start with I have a question. When it was like down at the bottom underneath section B, when it was transcribing the original DNA, I was wondering if this is literally what it looks like when they're doing TALEN gene therapy. Like,
You see where it's like an N and then it's like parentheses and there's an X underneath it?
1 minute
Does that mean
left,
you're taking out that base pair? And
So when we invest a lot of time looking at a common document that we all have access to, one of the essential parts is giving students space to talk about it and to come to some type of collaborative understanding based on every person who's entering that conversation. I heard some sweet conversations. A couple things I just wanted to celebrate. I saw someone go back to their notes on transcription. I saw someone else bust out their mRNA amino acid chart. Did you figure anything out?
The first line of translated DNA could have been Duchenne's disease, and the second line could have been Berger.
There's a big emphasis in talking like scientists in our classroom. This is something that is developed over a long period of time and is something that is continually honored and practiced. Tara, you had a quick thought before we build on this.
we think the N stands for like the stop that the TALEN gene therapy is inserting into the genetic code. Because
There is an expectation that when you share out, whether it's with your small table or the whole class, that you're speaking in full sentences. Those full sentences help to use the vocabulary and contextualize whatever students are saying.
So when we're talking about frame shifting, we're talking about a totally different reading of the mRNA during translation.
And how does that happen? Catherine, can you add on a little bit? Thanks, Kritika.
you add in a base pair.
I think we're great at talking about science because our teacher does a great job at emphasizing it.
And what do we mean by reading? I'm just pushing us a little bit because it's going to help set us up.
When it codes for a specific amino acid, and when you go, she asks us to be more specific if we're not using the knowledge we've gotten well enough, or she'll tell us to respond in full sentences so we really get our entire thought out there.
I think that the expectation has to be there that kids can be scientists. And more than anything, in order for that to happen, is there has to be space for their voice. There has to be space for them to make understanding out of whatever it is that they are having access to. As a scientist, they have the responsibility to make sense of the world around them. You need to come prepared tomorrow. You guys know that academic conversations and scientific debates are only fun when people are prepared, right? Resources are here. Text coding, you know how to do. You did a lot of good practicing of it today. Use any resources from today. Any questions? Send them.
All right, I'm stopping there. I want you to just take 3 minutes in a breakout room or at your table. What did you notice? What came up for you in watching that classroom? What connections do you make? What questions come up for you?
Okay, I'm just going to make the breakout rooms now, so give me a second. Tom, do you want to put your sound on so I can listen into the conversations in there?
Tom's actually not here because he's just left, but we're here.
Hello. How many have we got up there?
There is 7 of us.
Right, I tell you what then, maybe you guys have your own discussion and I'll have a chat with Jade and I'm not sure who else are you going to send your help off. You guys mute and I'll see you back in the main room.
Thanks.
Jade, are you there?
Hi, yes I am.
Are you okay? And then
Yeah,
I don't
good. How are you?
Okay, Blythe is, but hello if you're there. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I'm all right.
Good. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I was in a room all on my own.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I'm glad you've joined us. I'm not going to lie to you. Zoom technical side of things really stresses me out, so I'm keeping an eye on the time. We'll go for another 2 minutes. What are your reflections so far? Then, what were your reflections on that video?
I really like the focus on the oracy and the use of like technical vocab, getting them to speak like scientists. Something we've been talking about at Orchard quite recently. So yeah, that resonated quite a lot.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we talk a lot at Castlemead about speaking like a scholar, and yeah, whether that's speaking like an English scholar, speaking like a scientist, and vocab is one strand of that, but speaking in full sentences, making clear contributions. I think one of the questions I have and I want to put to Ron is, when you prioritize those opportunities for discussion, which we're really focusing on at the moment, purposeful talk in classrooms, but how do you ensure that you're not potentially breeding misconceptions if kids are talking to each other but they've not quite got the right idea? How do you avoid that as an opportunity for those misconceptions then embedding more widely?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to talk more about the stage of instruction that they're at and how much input they'd had before, because I was thinking that if you did that too early, there is a real risk there, isn't there? But if they've had a lot of direct instruction to get them to that point where they do have enough knowledge to be able to confidently talk accurately in groups, then yeah, but that's the danger, isn't it, with staff potentially using that too early on in the sequence, I would say.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that's really interesting. And at primaries, we do an awful lot of work before we even get to that stage of teaching children how to listen to each other, how to do the cues about nodding and I'm listening and how to answer. So, and I don't know, but it might be that you don't have the time, or you make an assumption that children come kind of almost ready equipped to be able to do that. But actually it's a skill in itself, isn't it, to partake in a group. And we do a lot of work at primary on that, because I completely agree, Chloe, you could easily end up with a case of 6 or 7 groups just being quite ineffective, possibly.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else, I think we appear to have the biggest breakout room, so I don't know if Lisa, Rachel, there's any questions that you want there. I can see, hi Ron, you've joined us. We've just noted down a question we're keen to pick your brains about. I don't know whether you want us to do that now or at the end.
I think we should probably pull back into the whole group. But
pull back into the whole group now, yeah.
But if you have questions you want to put to me, I can try to address them to the whole group.
Wonderful. Okay, I will close now and see you back in the main room. Thanks, everyone.
I think we're in the main room, Chloe.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah, I think so. Because I was in a room on my own, so I came back here, which is why it ended up just being me and you. And then I think a few more people have come back. So
got you. I think people are joining us now. I've closed the rooms.
Is being recorded.
I think one room is just making the most of every last second of their discussion. Got about half a minute and then they will close. Okay, I think we should have everyone rejoining us now.
Great, welcome back, everyone. Chloe, were there some pushes you wanted to give to me from the discussion you were in?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions that we had, Ron, was, well, first of all, there was so much that we noticed. We love the focus on oracy and the kind of language around speaking like scientists, and that's certainly something in our context. We use that sort of language as well. One of the questions we had was around ensuring that opportunities for discussion, such as those displayed in the video, don't act as kind of an opportunity to breed misconceptions more widely. If pupils are talking to each other, but they're not quite at the stage of understanding where they've mastered a concept, then how do you know that you're not just embedding misconceptions across the classroom?
I like that push. I would say I'm much less worried about misconceptions being out there because I think misconceptions are going to hit in the early stages all the time. And I think that we as teachers and as leaders often feel like we have to fix misconceptions as soon as they arise. And I think that's a mistake. I think that what we want to have kids do is present their thinking to each other and have them catch each other's misconceptions and have them critique each other and push each other. In the last case, to have a teacher step in and clarify misconceptions is a good final step. You don't want them to leave with a misconception. But I love having kids present their mathematical thinking or scientific thinking or historical thinking and have it not be right at first, and have other kids push them on it and have them debate and think about it rather than have the teacher correct at every point. So I think as educators, we worry too much about fixing misconceptions and not letting kids grapple long enough with trying to understand. Eventually, of course, you need to clear up misconceptions, but grappling with misconceptions is how we learn, I think. But it's a great question.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at this point? Or you can raise your hand if you do, or unmute yourself. Okay, in that case, I think we'll carry on with the presentation for now. Thank you, Ron.
Great. So I'm going to keep sharing. What I'm really talking about is beautiful and deeper instruction. And I thought rather than just talk about it, I wanted to show an example. And I'm going to be showing an example from primary. I'm going to be showing, other examples. So for those of you who teach younger students, don't feel left out yet. We'll get back to lots of different ages here. But that was a great example of what I think of as beautiful and deeper instruction. I actually wrote a book with my colleagues on deeper instruction. And you don't have to buy the book, but the videos I'm showing you are the free videos that you can get online that accompany the book. And in the book, we use this framework that deeper instruction is challenging and engaging and empowering. And it begins with challenging because we want to start with pushing kids. I think teachers often feel like they need to first engage kids and they want to be entertaining. I think that being challenged is the engagement for kids often, like to think, oh my gosh, we got to get to the top of that mountain. That's crazy scary. That's a great kind of engagement. Those students that you just saw are doing graduate level scientific work. The stuff they're grappling with is the same thing that students beyond university would be doing in their graduate work. Why would you give that to kids that are that age? Because it's a great challenge for them to grapple with adult level science. and making the work engaging and active, making them debate and having them have to present their thinking to each other. So challenging, engaging, and empowering is the framework we use. We also use a different lesson template, and you saw that template being used here in action in Hillary's classroom. So the traditional workshop model is the teacher stands at the board and she explains to students how to do a mathematical solution, what the concept is. Then the whole class practices that together, and then students on their own do it. That's a fine model and it works a lot of the time, especially with brand new concepts. But it's not the only model. And I think a very powerful additional model is what we would call Workshop 2.0, which is what we wrote this book about, which is that you start with kids grappling with texts that they don't fully understand, with a mathematical or scientific or historical problem they don't fully understand. And they have to grapple on their own, and then grapple in a small group and try to make sense of it and try to present their thinking. And if they have misconceptions, that's okay at first. Like, they are just trying to figure it out. And you saw that with these students, with that complex scientific figure that not a single student in the class fully understood, but they all had entry points. They weren't fully overwhelmed, and they all felt like they had theories and hypotheses of what that might be that they could then grapple with. After they grappled in groups and presented their thinking, then there's whole class making sense of the concepts that you're teaching and the skills that you're teaching. And then students go off toward application. So that's what we would call a Workshop 2.0 model. I'm conscious we have a lot of primary leaders and teachers here, so I want to dive into primary students doing this work. We're going to go to another city in the same state where I live, in Massachusetts. This is a school in Boston, Massachusetts. It's a free school like Castle Mead, centered in Boston, that works with younger students. And I want to share a project that those students did. So the project they did was they created an e-book, a guidebook that's hosted online and free for the world. And that guidebook, that e-book, is a book about snakes of the world. Each of those students, so these are second graders or year threes for you, so they're about 8 years old. Each of those students chose a snake that lives in the world, did independent research on that snake, and then did a scientific illustration of the snake and a day of the life in a narrative nonfiction format of that snake that you could learn about their life as you would in a field guide. So here's the diamondback rattlesnake in the New Mexico mountains by Nashari Davis. The first thing you notice is, wow, that's an incredible illustration for an 8-year-old girl. It would even be incredible for some of us as adults to do that. And you might think, I just picked the one that looks great. But the truth is, every single one of these 8-year-olds did incredible scientific illustration and writing. Everyone different, everyone powerful, everyone beautiful. This, all students are capable of excellence, is exactly what I think this can show. They produced this book and shared it with the world. It's called Slithering Snake Stories. And one of the interesting things about it is that because it's an ebook and it's free online, if you click on the page, you hear the student reading aloud his or her work to you as a narrator, and they also practice their narration skills. So I'm going to give you the audio for this. You'll hear Gavin Briggs narrating his page about the fertile ants viper in the Amazon River. And you'll also hear sound effects that he layered in as a separate audio track because he learned to use the software. And you'll also hear music that is laid in as a third audio track, which he learned to do. And the music is actually played by the students themselves.
Fertile ants viper in the Amazon River by Gavin Briggs. One June morning, the sun rises over the Amazon River. The sound of cicadas and the loud honking of macaws and parakeets consume the air. A warm breeze sweeps into the mangrove forest. Male bullfrogs and red-eyed tree frogs slowly begin to stop croaking. Howler monkeys start to call in a Mark My Territory choir. The winding vines overflow the canopy. Spider monkeys swing from vine to vine. A young 10-inch-long fertile ants viper wiggles out of his mother's belly and streaks out of her way. He slithers off into the canopy. His diamond-patterned scales shine in the sunlight as he slithers off in search of a suitable place to live. After a while, he curls up for a good nap. When he wakes, he is hungry, so he slithers off. He creeps closer and closer to a red-eyed tree frog. Bang! Within a second, he strikes. His fangs pierce the frog's skin as he slowly inches his mouth up the frog's slimy body. Then he rests on a nearby branch to digest. He wakes up suddenly as a harpy eagle comes swooping down. Fer-de-Lance freezes. Bam! He strikes. As the venom pours into the eagle's body, destroying its veins and arteries, the bird gets skinnier and skinnier. It falls out of the tree and lands with a thump. After a while, Fer-de-Lance finds a hole in a tree near the Amazon River and checks if there's anybody inside. It's empty, so he slithers into the hole and gets himself cozy. Soon he will need to shed. For now, he curls up and sleeps motionless with his eyes wide open.
So I'm going to stop there. This is work by year 3, second graders, 8-year-old kids. Amazing, beautiful work, I think. They did the research, they did the writing, incredible writing for kids that age. They did the scientific illustrations, they used the software, they created the web pages, they recorded the sound effects, they recorded the music, and put together an ebook available to the world. These same students also had the highest test scores in English language arts of any school in the 100 schools in their cohort. So the teacher actually leaned into this deep, powerful, beautiful project work and didn't sacrifice success in the traditional measure of test score, exam score results. So the students did better on their exams than any comparable school in the 100 school cohort of which they were a part. So what does the classroom look like where that work comes from? That's what I'm going to share with you now.
Baby African rock python soon passes a river, and a giant, starving, scaly crocodile rises out of the green water on its big, short legs and bounds toward her. Crocodiles are her predators.
And around. Well, this is a pretty cool.
When students are feeling excited and empowered by what they are learning, it creates the right conditions for producing really high quality work. And getting really high quality work from every student means they have to go through a process of critique and revision. We began thinking about our scientifically accurate drawings of our snakes by looking at models done by kids from earlier years.
What are some stars we could give about Goodness's snake shape? Some compliments, some kind critique. Maxwell.
I like how he wrote the head and the tail where it's supposed to be.
Students worked on one aspect of illustration at a time, starting with their snake shape.
I want you to now think about stairs. What are some stairs, some things that he could work towards in his next draft? Turn and talk.
Yeah, and I think you should make the head, because it kind of looks like it's sacking down, so it can make it a little bit round.
I wanted students to not only understand how to look carefully like scientists at the work, but also be able to enhance their ability to give critique and feedback by using our rubrics.
Okay, if the target's met, that means that in every single place that the lines are smooth. Do you see some smooth lines? Where do you see some smooth lines? Okay. Do you see smooth lines everywhere? Can you point a few lines where they're not so smooth? Okay, so did she hit the target for that? Okay, so is she getting started?
I've been traveling around the country for the past 10 years,
with a story called Austin's Butterfly about the power of critique and feedback. And that story has become a phenomenon in a way. It has taken off internationally. Tens of thousands of students and teachers have found it a provocation to create beautiful work.
It's not bad, and it is a butterfly, but does it look exactly like this? No,
And people often ask me, what would it look like if that Austin's Butterfly process was always there in a classroom? What could a classroom look like? And I'm not sure I've ever seen a classroom that's a better example of that than this classroom.
Would you agree that the size, how wide the
We have
snake
three
is
things that we
same
always
until it
ask
gets
kids
the
to
tail?
do when we're doing a critique. Be kind, be specific, and be helpful. And after the kids practiced, we began the process of going back and critiquing each other's work. And what I find is that in the beginning, kids are really great about being kind.
I like that you made like the tail, because I can see in the picture that it goes up.
So at the beginning, we don't see a lot of very helpful or specific feedback. Over time, as kids do this, and we're talking about over several weeks, as they practice, critique, and their drawings improve, you can see that the kids begin to recognize the value of that specific and helpful feedback.
Like right here is like more wider, so one thing I do to get it in proportion, I go like that, and then I go like that, and then I erase the lines, and then I just make it how my fingers were. And the nugget of space here should be a little bit smaller. And the negative space here could be bigger. So
I also needed to be able to sit with kids individually to help them improve their ability to give critique. So I needed a process in my classroom to give kids more independence in their work.
But some of you yesterday finished a draft and were really hoping to get some critique from peers. For example, Marguerite finished one of her snake shapes. So Marguerite would find her name. This is Marguerite Asian Rock Python. And what Marguerite would do is she would move her name to being ready for a peer critique. Anybody else who's ready for a peer critique would move their name to ready for a peer critique.
I've used the project board with kids for a long time, and that helps them become the co-managers of the critique process. They can see where anyone is in the classroom at any time, and I can see where anyone is in the classroom at any time, and then they can choose a partner to go and do critique with. It's great because it means kids aren't always going to their friends. It's great because they can take more ownership over the critique process themselves. Over time, we focused on other physical features like scales, patterns, and color. And along the way, we worked with different experts who taught the kids specific techniques.
So sometimes we're going to see just plain old circles. Sometimes do you see ovals?
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh my goodness, like perfectly perpendicular diamonds, like that?
And for each new aspect of their illustration, we created a rubric and had opportunities for critique and feedback.
I like how your scales are going to the direction of where the body is. Like something that you can work on, like a stair, is trying to make all the scales the same size. Not like smaller. I had to make them big because you know how it's facing towards Dorado.
Getting kids to do their best work is what learning expeditions are all about. It's not just about doing it when we're doing our high-quality artwork. We take the same process, then we can apply it to the way we craft our written stories. Or in our school, we can do the same thing when we think about all the music that's essential in our school. Learning how to do your best work and learning that that happens through a process of critique and revision is very empowering for students. It sets them up for success in any academic or personal venture in the future.
Instead of a triangle. But just make it a little bit bigger, not just...
All right, I'm going to pause there. We're about 15 minutes away from closing, and I'm ready for pushback. I'm happy to have people through Chloe or through the chat or through in any way you can push me on, okay, that doesn't seem realistic, or this wouldn't be helpful, or what about this situation? Happy to grapple with you on sort of what you're seeing and what questions are coming up for you.
Can I kick us off, Ron? Because I've had a couple of questions via the chat. So perhaps if I start with those and then we can go from there. People feel free to unmute or send me questions directly or indeed to the whole chat. It's completely up to you. So the first one was, and this was touched on at the end of that video, the question came through, I think, before that point. But do you think the idea of beautiful work extends to all subjects? And how can we ensure that our students know what it means for a piece of work to be beautiful?
I love that question. So I've spent my entire 47 years in education collecting beautiful work. I actually have a website called Models of Excellence. And there's beautiful mathematical work, beautiful scientific work, beautiful historical work, beautiful written work, nonfiction, poetry, essays, analytical writing. Like, I think any work in its discipline well done is beautiful. And if you invite a scientist, a mathematician, an author into your class, to your school, to talk with your teachers, to talk with your students about their work, they will talk about beautiful work. They'll say, that's a beautiful solution. That's a beautiful theory. And so I think the concept of what beautiful writing and beautiful mathematics and beautiful history looks like comes from discussing and analyzing with your students. Why is that a great essay? Why is that a great solution? Why is that a great hypothesis? And so I love the obsession about beautiful work, and I think it extends to every discipline.
Thank you. And then the second one was around this notion of critique, as we just saw in the video there. How can we create the conditions in our classrooms and also school-wide as leaders for that sort of critique to be the norm? I guess that means in terms of the rollout of that process and equipping students with the skills to be able to do that really well.
Great. And I do think that critique can become an engine in any one of our schools for an incredible boost in the quality of student work, but it doesn't come quickly and easily. So the first thing to remember is your students, whether they're little kids in primary or whether they're really big kids, your students critique all the time, but what they critique is football teams and clothing and music and food. Like, they're always critiquing. They want to critique. So we need to harness that energy and run critique sessions in all different ways so kids learn how to use critique around academic subjects. They need to build their academic vocabulary. What makes a good solution? What makes a good geometric proof? What makes a good essay? And look at models together and critique those together. And then they get equipped to be able to do peer critique. They need to do it together first, and they need to learn the language of the discipline, and they need to learn how to push. They should create criteria lists. What do we think makes a good geometric proof? What do we think makes a good essay or book review or whatever the format and genre you're working in? And I think practicing that regularly with students. I also think it's important that kids know that in real life, nothing is done in one draft. Nobody writes a book and just finishes it. Everyone goes through multiple drafts. No football team goes out to play a match without practicing first. No orchestra goes on stage without having rehearsed first. Like, we all rehearse and do again and again to get better at what we do. That's the way real life is. That's the way school can be. And so if the expectation is that it's a race to get your work done and hand it in, you always end up with low quality work. If you frame it by saying, we're going to do at least 2 or 3 drafts of this, but you might do 6 drafts or 8 drafts. Like, we really are focused on creating a beautiful story or poem or essay or analysis. We're not working on, it's not a race here. This is around quality, not speed. And so framing it so kids feel that they're going to get attention, positive attention from peers and from the teacher for having recrafted and revised and redone something that they're proud of.
I'm just picking out a question that I think follows on really nicely from that. Thank you, Ron. And it is about the notion of time. We have a lot to get through as teachers in terms of curriculum content. So how do you strike that balance between striving for something that has been carefully crafted, curated, redrafted, and actually getting through all of the content in your curriculum in a suitable amount of time? How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, and I like, Chloe, that's framed as balance rather than a binary. It's either one way or the other. It always has to be a balance. There's a lot of things that we as leaders and teachers need to cover. But if we make a mistake, it's always on going too thin and too broad, and we never mistake by going too deep. That's my feeling. I feel like we have to sometimes be in a survey mode, sometimes cover a lot of content. But if we're always in that mode, then kids never learn to understand the concepts deeply. They never perfect their skills so they do beautiful work. So we have to get off the treadmill occasionally. Here's a quick story that's a metaphor for me in that. My father worked in a chemical plant. He worked in the same plant for 48 years. He retired and only had 1 year of retirement because he died the next year. But during that 1 year, he had a pension and he traveled with my mother. They went to Europe. They lived in the United States. And when he came back, he said, "You've got to come see our pictures for Europe. We had this amazing visit." And I went to his home and looked at all of their pictures. And I found out that they had done a trip through Europe, which was 14 countries in 12 days. So all of their pictures were from the windows of trains. They were castles and cathedrals and cities. And they were all a little blurry and they all had a train window around them. And they couldn't remember what country they were from. Like, I think that's Switzerland. No, maybe it's Germany. No, maybe it's Italy. And I thought, oh my goodness, that was my whole education as a kid. I was always looking out through the train window at the quadratic formula or these dates in history or this, like everything was moving so quickly that it disappeared. And after the test, I often forgot a lot of it. And I thought, what if my parents had not done 12 countries or 14 countries? What if they'd gone to 3 or 4 in that time and they had gotten off in England or in Italy or in some place for a few days and really got to know the culture and country better? It would have been so deep and powerful and memorable for them. So my metaphor is we got to stop the train sometimes. We can't stay in England all the time if we're doing going through Europe, but we can't try to fit in every single country on the continent. We do kids a tremendous disservice if we never let them get off the train in Italy and have an amazing Italian meal and go to a beautiful art museum and learn the culture a little bit and get some depth there. So whether we're in mathematics or literacy or history or science, where do we want to stop the train so kids can go deep? What are the concepts we want to get them to know well? And what are the few things a year we want to take until they've done it so beautifully that they're proud of it? So it has to be a balance, Chloe. I love that. But it's got to be a balance where we actually do stop the train sometimes and let kids do something beautifully and go deep.
I really, really love that metaphor. Thank you, Ron, for that. Sarah, you sent in a question, which I think you might have seen, Ron, because it came through to everyone. And that was around engaging students who might speak English as an additional language in that process of critique. How might they be supported in investing and engaging fully in that?
I love it. I'll give a quick answer to that, but I have a beautiful video on that. I don't have time to show it because we're going to end in 5 minutes. But I will send the video link to you, Chloe, and you can share it with the trust.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yeah, it's a video of a teacher, middle grades teacher. So like year 8s for you, teaching in a classroom where many of the students do not have English as their first language. And he worked with the specialist teacher, the English as a second language teacher, to modify work so that kids could still do difficult texts, could still grapple, could still do the same project, but had a lot of modifications in how the material was presented to help them go deep. For example, he took the difficult English vocabulary words, put them on cardstock, cut them up and put them on tables, and kids in small groups built thought maps about how those words connect to each other. And so the kids themselves were helping each understand the key vocabulary in the reading they were going to do. He had different versions of the reading where the ELL, the English language learning kids, had more scaffolding for how they could fill out the note catchers for it. So I'll share that video with you. Sorry, I don't have time to show it in full, but I think we want our English language learners to be able to be in the real grappling and in the real work, and we have to do scaffolding for them at the same time, so that things can work for them too, but they're not always outside that exciting learning.
Absolutely, thank you. And yeah, that's really generous of you. We look forward to seeing that video, so thank you. I think because we had a couple of kind of duplicates in terms of questions, does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask Ron directly? If so, feel free to put your hand up or unmute. I think we might have covered everything in that case. So we are, go on, sorry, Ron.
I have 2 minutes left. I'm going to end with a 2-minute film for you. So the students that you saw in that classroom that were studying snakes decided that snakes are mistreated everywhere in the world. They're always the bad guy. In every religion and every fable, snakes are the bad guys. And they decided, we love snakes. Snakes are God's creatures. We should protect snakes. And they decided we have to educate the world about the value of snakes. So they thought about creating a public service announcement or a letter to a newspaper. And they finally decided they wanted to create a music video that celebrates the value of snakes. And being a school that does multiple drafts and multiple rehearsals and high quality work, they produced a really high quality music video. And it's been seen about 50,000 times. So I'm going to share with you to close the video about snakes that those students that you just saw created. They took a song by Lady Gaga. The song is Born This Way, about how people that are all different should all be treated well and that they shouldn't have to be pushed to the margins. And they rewrote the lyrics to be snakes are born this way.
It doesn't matter if you're scared of them or not. Just open up your heart, because snakes were just born this way.
Our teachers told us in second grade we'd be herpetologists. If you don't know, that means we study snakes from everywhere around the world. There's nothing wrong with having scaly skin. We say snakes are all made perfectly. So watch them slither sweep, 'cause they'll go far, even with no legs and arms. No need to be scared of snakes, they're not all the same. You can't change who they are. Snakes are born this way, they are a part of this world. Don't judge snakes by their looks, you can't change who they are. Snakes are born this way. Did you know that without snakes, mice would eat up all our grains? There would be no food for cows. Without cows, we have no pizza and no ice cream. We need snakes, baby, they are born this way. You can't change who they are. Snakes are born this way.
That was great.
That was actually really high pitch now.
Thank you for indulging me in my passion for beautiful student work and beautiful instruction. I hope that there were some helpful things for you in this. And please, anytime you wish, go to our website and take anything you wish. It's eleducation.org. All of the videos I've shared with you are free and open source, and all of our materials are as well. Chloe, thank you for asking me to join your trust.
Ron, thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege, honestly. And I'm trying to organize a kind of summary of points, but my notes are just all over the place because there were just so many nuggets in that I feel like I need to go and take away and reflect on. But some of the things that really stood out, firstly, the case studies were just wonderful to hear those concrete examples of the real lives that have been changed and shaped by the brilliant work that you do. I'll definitely be downloading my copy of the Slithering Snake Stories ebook for my own children, because I think they'll really enjoy listening to that. I love the notion of getting to the top of the mountain and how that's just threaded through everything that you do, and that relentless focus on relationships and character kind of as underpinning parts of that. And ultimately, as you've just said, focus on celebrating beautiful work. And I think the kind of question that I'm left with is, how can we make sure that our children, that our students really understand what it means to produce a beautiful piece of work, and the investment that needs to go into that ultimately, so that's something they can feel really proud of in the long term. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving your time so generously, and also your resources. I'm sure many of us will be straight on your website now looking at some of those videos and other resources too.
Yeah, there's if anyone wants to take a picture of that, there's where our free resources are. And the Models of Excellence website, I imagine that people in the Mead Educational Trust in your schools, lots of kids are doing beautiful work. Send us your beautiful work. And if it gets through the curation, we'd love to share it with the world. We get 10,000 visitors a week looking at the beautiful work of students. And if you have beautiful work to share that you're proud of, please send it on to us. And it's a global free museum of beautiful student work for the whole world.
That is amazing. I didn't realize you could send it in, so we will definitely be doing that, certainly at Castlemead and hopefully in our other schools as well. Can that just be any work whatsoever, on any subject, any topic, any theme, Ron?
Yes, and any grade level, any age.
Wonderful. So colleagues, I urge you to go and have a look at that website and think about pieces of your own students' work you might want to share, because what a thing that would be for them to be proud of and to have their work out there as a model of excellence. Ron, we're 3 minutes past 5, so I will let you go, but huge thank you. And thank you team at colleagues for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.